Hello, everybody, and welcome back to UXchange, the podcast where I exchange my user experiences to change them, and yours for the better. I'm Jeremy, a mentor and senior user researcher with over 8 years of experience and a background in neuroscience. Throughout my career, I've had the privilege of engaging with hundreds of users around the world, spanning across Europe, the USA, Africa, and India. This has allowed me to deliver actionable insights that have improved user experiences with nutrition, automotive, delivery, and e-commerce sectors. I've created this podcast with the aim of providing my mentorship and educational content, offering actionable tips, knowledge, and guidance in the realm of research, specifically focusing on UX research to anyone having an interest in this area. And I hope that you will find this episode insightful.
One, two, three, four.
Let's dive right in. In this episode, I'll cover how to scope a UX research project. So this episode is part of a 3-episode series on the topic. The first one covering why is it so important to scope a UX research project before you start. The second one would be about how and when is it more appropriate to do it. And in the third one, I will present to you my actual framework and my guide regarding how you can scope your UX research project with a direct link to download my guide that you can reuse at the scale of any UX research project you might conduct. More specifically, in this episode, I'll cover the reason why I wanted to do this episode and why I needed to craft this guide. Then I'll cover why scoping a UX research project before it starts is important, and more specifically, I'll dive into the 3 main reasons I identified regarding why scoping is important, being the impact you might bring, the importance of ownership regarding research, and the last one being issues related to commitment. And I'll end this episode on a note related to what it can bring you, the aspect of scoping a UX research project, what it can bring you as a UX researcher. Okay, so let's dive right in. So, why first this guide? Why this episode? Why this series? Well, as you all know, as UX researcher, starting a UX research project can be as exciting as it is stressful. And if you're a UX researcher or a person conducting research, you might know what I'm talking about. So exciting because we learn a lot of things, okay? And this is in general really challenging. A lot of UX research projects are really challenging because they pose many problems. And there are a lot of unknowns, and that is why we are running this UX research project. But at the same time, these are the same reasons why it can be stressful. Stressful because of the many unknowns that we have and a lot of things that have to be defined before moving forward. So the idea behind this guide and this series of episodes is for me to guide you guys so that you do not go through the same mistakes that I've been through in my past experience and that sometimes I am still doing. So my goal was to provide you with an easy to follow step-by-step checklist to scope your UX research projects. And so it began with an observation. So in my current experience, first of all, and also in my past one, so it's still going. Okay, this is something you have to consider. You have to realize that this is something, no matter your experience, this is something that is really inherent to your activity as a user researcher. Dealing with uncertainty, dealing with badly phrased UX research requests for projects, this is something that is inherent to the job, okay? Because you will deal with stakeholders. For those who don't know, a stakeholder is someone who has a stake in the UX research projects. So someone who is interested in your project, basically. So it can be a product manager, it can be a designer, it can be a data analyst, it can be a VP, it can be anyone. And so, as it can be anyone, not everyone is trained to do research, or trained at least to phrase their requests and their needs in a research-oriented way, let's say, and in an accurate research question style way that is accurate and that will lead to actually actionable insights, because this is your job. So this is also your job to rephrase the requests. And so, as this is something inherent to the job, this is something that you will do really, really often at the scale of every project. But this is not the only thing. This is not the only reason why I did this guide. So there are many things at stake here. So you can have people, stakeholders, addressing your requests to run projects. And these requests can be, quote unquote, I'm not meaning this in a negative way, but quote unquote badly phrased, okay? Or insufficiently phrased to move forward. So in this case, you will have to rephrase them, to iterate on them, to make sure, to align with them, and to make sure that this is what they need to be aligned and to move forward with this. This is the first thing. But you can have another scenario, which actually happens to me all the time, and still in my current practice. So the other scenario is that the stakeholder actually phrases a request for a UX research project, which is actually not best answered by UX research. So sometimes UX research is not the right tool, or the project in itself is not interesting in terms of value it could bring to the business. So that is why I thought it would be useful for you to have this step-by-step process that you can follow to make sure any request made by a stakeholder is actually valuable, useful, and that you can move forward with it so that you can bring value to the business. So in a few points to summarize, I observed throughout my experience that not all projects that I was requested to do were relevant, basically. Sometimes I got some requests for projects that are not actually best answered by UX research, such as experimentation. So sometimes the best way to answer a question a stakeholder has or a need for research is done with A/B testing. So there is no need to actually run qualitative or quantitative, by quantitative in this case I mean surveys, with users. There is actually no need. So this is also your job to determine if UX research is the right tool to answer the requests. Not all projects have the same priority, and sometimes stakeholders, even if they are related, or even if they have more knowledge related to business, sometimes they do not have the full picture of a problem, and so that is why sometimes you get some requests that if you do them without thinking, if you answer them without thinking, actually you couldn't deliver insights. It would be great, but there are some projects waiting, stacked on your desk, waiting, that could be more beneficial for users, for customers, and for the business. And finally, not all projects would deliver insights that would be acted upon. And so this, for multiple reasons, it can be related to what I was just saying now, which is other projects are more important than this, or UX research is not the right tool to do it. These are possible explanations, but sometimes you have other explanations, such as the feasibility. Imagine you run some discovery research and you come to the conclusion that you have to add a feature in the app or in the product or in the service that your company is actually offering your customers, but then you realize this is not actually feasible in the time frame that we have, or other things are more priority. So in this case, your insights will not be acted upon. All of that can be avoided upfront. And it's even before planning the research. It's even before thinking about the research itself. Here, we're not thinking about the research. We are thinking about the request. So if someone comes to you with a request, don't think directly, what is the best methodology? What is the best tool I can use? The time frame, blah, blah, blah. No. You have to think requests. And so the goal of this 3 series is, first of all, to tell you why it's important with the 3 pillars I mentioned, which are the impact that you can have, the commitment, which is super important, and the ownership of research. So this is the first episode. Then I will tell you when to do it, the scoping. You can already have an idea, it will be done at the beginning, how to do it. And in the third episode, you will actually have the tool, a framework that you can use step by step. Okay, let's dive right in. The why. Why is it important to scope a UX research project? So the first aspect that I wanted to mention is impact. As UX researchers, we want to deliver impactful insights. Okay, what is an impactful insight? An insight, so first of all, what is an insight? An insight is something that we discover about our customers or our users that we didn't know about. This is a very broad definition, but actually this is not so easy to understand, because what do we didn't know about mean? If we do proper research beforehand, probably we would know about this. So probably this would not be an insight. So this gets a bit philosophical sometimes, because it depends on the time you have to, and the type of research you can do, and the type of research you did in the past, to define what do you know, what don't you know, and what should you know. But this is the first aspect. An insight is something that is actually teaching you something that you learn about your customers, and it encompasses several things. And actually, I did another episode on the topic, so if you're interested, I highly encourage you to do so, to listen to it, But in a nutshell, an insight can be something about a behavior, about a feeling, about a need, about a mental model, something that is actually teaching you something about your customers in a way that you think we have to rethink something about the product, and we have to iterate the product accordingly. So this is about the insight. Now, what is an impactful insight? Well, an impactful insight, as the name implies, is an insight that has impact. But impact on what? Well, impact on users and impact on the business. Impact on users, it means that it will, and impact on the business as well, it means that it's an insight that will actually be used by the company, so that will inform strategy, that will be used by the company to iterate on the product accordingly to the insight, to deliver something to the user that answers their needs. This is basically an actionable insight. So it's an insight that is being acted upon. And so, as you can imagine, the goal of UX research, we do not do UX research or research with customers just out of, it's not a hobby. So maybe we like it very much, but it's not a hobby. In the end, we do it because it's our job, of course, but we do it also because we want to bring value, because it delivers meaning to us, okay? Because we want to see change in the way we talk to people. By talking here, I mean delivering them content, such as an app, a product, a service, because what we deliver is actually a way for us to have a dialogue with them. This is, through it, we can talk to them. We are having a conversation. So, an actionable insight is an insight that will help facilitate the conversation between customers and the company. And so, yes, as researchers, we want to deliver actionable insights. But the reality is not every research project delivers actionable insight. And in fact, this is hypothetical, but this is based on my experience, the experience of my colleagues that I see every day, for the past 8 years. And also of my mentees, because I have some mentees coming to me. They're actually professionals in UX research, and they also tell me that their insights are not being acted upon. In fact, I would say, maybe I'm wrong, but I would, depending also on the maturity of the company, because this is multifactorial. This is a multifactorial problem. Sometimes, even if you deliver the best insights, the culture of the company makes it that it's hard to act upon, even if you do everything that I'm telling you on this guide. Okay, so I know what I'm telling you here. I'm telling you all of this with the purpose of at least teaching you one thing. If after listening to this episode you at least learned one thing, I'm happy. So, in the reality, insights are rarely acted upon. Why? As I was telling in other episodes, because what you tell us is not applicable. It's not feasible in the time frame that we have, or it doesn't match the business strategy, or it was badly communicated, the insight, so that the stakeholders didn't understand it, and so they didn't translate it well, basically, in terms of design and in terms of implementation. So many things can go wrong along the way, okay? But I think that a lot of these things can be avoided up front with this guide that I will tell you more about in the 3rd episode. So yes, scoping UX research projects can help you be more impactful in multiple ways. You will understand it more in the 3rd episode. But basically, it involves asking you the right questions before a project even begins. So, for instance, what are the resources that we have? If I deliver you insights, are you able to act upon this? Okay? Why are we doing this, basically? What are we doing this research project? Why are we building this feature? Is it something users really need? Okay? Are you able to act upon my insights if I deliver them to you? Is UX research the right tool to answer your research questions? Because if you expect, for instance, a validation on thousands of customers in an e-commerce website that version A leads to more conversion than version B, then you don't need UX research insights. You don't need to understand why users are doing things a certain way. You just need to know what version leads to more conversion. For instance, how long it might take, what is the type of data that the stakeholder needs, and so on and so on. Also, is it only validating a solution that the stakeholder had in mind? So, for instance, they woke up one day and they thought, yeah, I would implement a federated login. Like, federated login is login with Google, login with Apple, and so on. And so, is it only validating a solution that they had in mind, or is it really deep diving into the problem? Because if a stakeholder comes to you with a solution that they want to validate, but there is no prior knowledge on that to make sure that this solution is actually answering a need and a problem, well, maybe there is some scoping to be done, such as what is the current customer problem, what is the history of this solution, and so on and so forth. So basically, all of these questions that you will ask yourself beforehand will help you determine, first, that the UX research project should be conducted or not. So this is the first layer in my framework that I will present to you. So first, should the UX research project be conducted based on several elements, such as is there really a need, or can someone act on my insights after the fact? This is the first layer. Once you have it, you have to determine the size of the research you will conduct. I'm not speaking here about methodologies and the like. This is not the moment. This is at the step of planning. Here we're speaking about scoping. So just having in mind what the research is about, what is the size of it, and so on. So the second aspect is about determining what is the size of the research you should conduct based on several elements. You will see more in the framework, but basically, what do we already know about the product or the customer, past research, and so on, and what is the risk if we don't run UX research. So I'm still integrating this in the scoping section and not in the planning section, because actually, if at this stage the stakeholder hears some things that they don't like, such as, I don't know, we need to run a 1 month research or 2 months research because we don't know enough about the topic, and this is really risky to move forward without knowing more about this. This can imply a whole restructuring of the projects and the strategy and so on. So that's why it's important to have these conversations in the scoping moment. And the last step, so the first two are like filtering. It's like a screener, but for projects. Okay, so the first one, as I said, is research really needed? Or can you run research on this project? Will it be acted upon? The second one is sizing the project. And the third one is actually you pass the filters, let's say. And for me, is just getting more information before the kickoff. So more information on the customers, on the strategy, on the product, any question you might need answer, because at this stage you already know that you will be moving forward. So this is a 3-step framework. I will tell you more about this in the third episode, but I wanted to give you some sneak peek of how it looks like, because it's important for you to know that all of these aspects contribute to being more impactful. And being impactful, in my opinion, is first dealt with before the project even starts. It's easier to control these aspects before than after the fact. After the fact, it's a bit too late. If a project has been scoped badly, then it's only going downhill, and then there's not much you can do, basically. So if you delivered amazing insights but for the wrong project or for the wrong customer, for the wrong product and feature, of course, it will not be actionable and impactful. Okay, so this was the first aspect, why scoping is important, the impact part. Now the second aspect regarding why scoping is important is about commitment. So let me tell you about two scenarios. These are two extremes. When you run a research project, of course, you will commit to your stakeholders regarding a lot of things. So the time it will take, the methodology you will use, the number of customers or users you will interview, blah, blah, blah. Okay? And all of this relates to the effort you might put into your project. So let's think about two extremes. So there is one which is the extreme, we need to do this and this and that, and it will take this time, and then this step will depend on the first one, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And this can be quickly a lot. Okay. And there is nothing wrong with that. The only problem is if this is not reflecting reality. Meaning, you think that you should, use 4 methodologies and, interview or run research with interview 12 users and then run a follow-up survey, blah, blah, blah. And so this might scare your stakeholders. Imagine you're a freelancer and you deliver them a quote. Well, they can run away because they will think this is too much, this is too long, this is too costly, blah, blah, blah. Okay? This type of problem happens when you think about your how can I say, your proposal to handle the UX research project without even scoping it first. And scoping comes with discussions. You will see in the second episode, I will talk about how you can do it and when you can do it. But basically, this is one extreme where when you do the scoping yourself, okay, on your side, without consulting the stakeholders, and you might scare them off by actually telling them you will do a lot. And then we would have another extreme, which happens when you don't scope enough the project. So it's the same, but it's the opposite consequence, let's say. So in this case, you actually end up with a project much more lightweight than what you should. So basically you think that only running, I don't know, one methodology and interviewing 5 participants is enough, and then later on your stakeholder is actually surprised to see that what you delivered is not answering their needs. And this is also another extreme. Or it can also happen that you discover along the way that what you planned is not enough. That requires you to go on with additional research, which can lead you to burnout very quickly. So these are 2 extremes that can happen, and this all share the common cause of not scoping the research enough. And so this is all about commitment. Okay, by scoping I mean, we will see in the second episode how you can do it, but by interacting with your stakeholders enough before the start of the project, you can make sure we are all aligned on the expected deliverables and content of the research before moving forward. So by scoping the research, you also commit to regarding the content of the research, the deliverables, and so on, so that then further down the line, you won't have more problems with that, at least with the workload and the content. So this is the second aspect. And the third one, in my opinion, is just an ownership problem. So in the end, you are the one doing the research. So imagine you're an individual contributor in a team. So you're a UX researcher, level 1, 2, or 3, whatever. And usually, this is how it happens in companies, you're being delivered the project by your UX research manager. When you have a UX research manager, sometimes your manager is actually coming from a product design background, and sometimes you will be reporting to other people. So it can be directly the VP. In such types of cases, in general, you have more experience, but I don't know. I never met this situation, but this is what I can think about. Okay, but in general, the scoping is done by someone else. So it can be done by your stakeholders directly, such as a product manager, product designer, and so on. Or it can be done by your manager directly, by your UX research manager. And I see 2 problems with that. I'm not saying that in the company, these people are not allowed to scope the research to help you scope it further then again, or discuss together. I'm saying if they are the only people scoping the research and you are acting in an executional manner, we have a problem. And let me take you 2 examples. And actually, this is taken from an article that I read that I will link in the show notes, so you can read more about this. So, about 2 articles, sorry, by the way. So the first article is really interesting and talked about why it's bad for managers and other stakeholders to be the only ones scoping research. The first one is managers. So even if they have past experiences doing research, they might not have exactly the same background as the user researcher doing the research right now. So it's very rare to have a UX research manager who has exactly the same skill set as the user researcher doing the research. Sometimes we have differences in terms of the methodologies we know, and so on, the way of working, blah, blah, blah. And also, if they are managers, it's more often than not that they are not doing research anymore, and more often than not, it's been a long time. So they might have forgotten, and I'm not meaning bad here, but they might have forgotten what this implies in terms of workload and so on. So you might have a very friendly manager, but this can happen. So usually it would be best if the manager can prepare the field for you, but then you should be the one scoping the project. And then if this is scoped by another person who is not in the research field, well, naturally this person will not know everything that a person running research should know. So then discussion, or in this case, lack thereof, might be difficult along the way. So it's really an ownership problem. You will be the one running the research. You should own this project, and you should be the one scoping the UX research project. Be proactive. Ask questions to your stakeholders, to your manager, and so on. We will see in the second episode how to do it. But yeah, you're the one running the research. You should be the one scoping it, or at least taking ownership on this. And so before moving forward regarding a sneak peek of how you can do it, let me tell you what scoping can bring you. You have already understood it by now. Of course, if you scope your research project, you will be more impactful because you will deliver insights that actually satisfy, are in line with the business strategy, that actually answer customers' needs, real needs, because you would know them at this time, because you would have scoped the research and researched about previous projects. It will increase buy-in from your stakeholders, of course. You will also, thanks to that, gather important requirements for your research. Further down the line, you will also align with your stakeholders on a shared vision so that you avoid commitment, let's say, issues. You gather, of course, context and history about the project. And finally, you own the research, so it can only help you grow. So these are the main elements that I can think of right now. And so basically now, how can you be more impactful and how can you scope a UX research effectively? One sneak peek I can tell you is basically you should research the problem. Okay, so I told you the first pillar regarding why we should scope our UX research project is to be impactful. Impactful is to deliver impactful insights because they actually align with the business strategy and the customer's needs. Okay, how can you do it? Well, basically, I would say by being more human-centered than user-centered. So what I mean by that is you should answer people's needs, not only your users' needs. And by people's needs here, I mean the stakeholders and the people that altogether are part of the business that you are in. Meaning, if a stakeholder comes to you with a request asking you for some research, you should ask questions to your stakeholders to make sure you understood the request, to make sure you understood the needs, and to make sure you came down to the root of the problem. So it's not enough doing a validation study for a feature that a stakeholder just thought about in the morning, and because you will have insights for sure, but if this solution, for instance, has been developed based on nothing, on no evidence, on no tangible data, you will maybe answer your stakeholders' request, but you will not help your stakeholders. So oftentimes, and this is our job as user researcher, and this is why I like it so much, we have to come down to the root of a problem by uncovering people's needs. And deep needs in general are not even known by people themselves. So that's why you have to use psychological tools, qualitative methodologies, and practices to come down to the root of the problem. So treat your stakeholders as your users, and this is where you will be able to challenge the requests you've been given to be, in the end, more actionable, to deliver insights that are actually well acted upon. And so I hope that by now you understood what I mean when I say scope the UX research project. By this, I mean, and this is actually the second article I was referring to, going from a linear response mode. So in a traditional manner, linear response mode, we are a UX researcher. A stakeholder comes to us one day and say, I need this research to be done on blah, blah, blah. And you run the research and you ask no questions. This is, well, I believe in the past it was more the case. I don't know, maybe it's only me, but I know also other colleagues. It happened, actually questioning very little the project. And really, I would say, to be more impactful, it's going from this to actually challenging the project, asking questions, and going from this scoping first mode. And this is not by me, although I deeply agree. This is by someone who wrote this in an article. I will also embed it in the show notes. So that was it for today's episode. As a summary, Why scoping UX research is important? Well, first, we all know UX research projects are exciting because there are a lot of unknowns, but it can also be the reason why they are so challenging and so stressful. And so that is why scoping is important, because it will help you know more about the project, know more about the users, know more about the why you're running this research. And then the second point, as a summary, is that more often than not, UX researchers act on a linear mode rather than a scoping first mode, simply executing projects without asking first about the reasons why, about what is behind this project, why should we do it, is there possibility to act upon my insights when I deliver them. And this is what will make this actionable. And then we have the idea of the commitment. So scoping the UX research project will help you commit to actually the content of the project, the deadlines, the workload, and so on. And finally, there is this ownership issue. You are the best, the one that is most able to scope the research project effectively, because you will be the one running it. So don't leave that only to your UX research managers and other stakeholders. At least take part in that. This is really important. And so that was it for the episode of today. I'm really happy to have made this episode, and I can't wait for the next part, which will be about how you can scope a UX research project effectively, when you should do it. And remember, the third part will be actually the guides, the framework that I crafted with the actual questions that I use at the scale of every project to scope it. So if you like this show, if you learned at least one thing today, if you thought that at least one thing was insightful, I will be super happy. And that is why, if you want to receive guidance, actionable knowledge, and tips straight to you when I deliver it, please subscribe, share it if you liked it, and if you think that someone might be interested, and leave a review. Of course, thank you again for your time and attention. And if you have any questions, comments, suggestions for future topics, feel free to reach out to me. The link will be in the show notes. See you in the next episode. Bye-bye.